just at the lab where I go every Tuesday and do blood work. But today I actually got a parking spot, and so I have to sit in the car because I have another appointment in an hour, but I can't go anywhere or I'll lose my parking spot, which I got by miracle, by chance of a miracle. So I just thought, well, I'll just sit here and talk to you guys about some things that people have asked me. And like I was talking about amyloidosis and the signs and symptoms in the other video, I wanted to address, I thought, oh, this is a good time to address the other question that I get constantly, which is, what caused this? And again, I think that's out of fear that nobody wants it and they are scared and wonder how you got it. But just like when you get any other kind of cancer or something, there really is no proof of how you got it. And with amyloidosis, there really isn't a lot of evidence. The only evidence that I've been reading, because I do a lot of reading on it, is that chemicals have something to do with it, and radiation, and I believe pesticides. So I was thinking that I would go back in my mind and think about from as early as being a teenager when I encountered any heavy pesticides or chemicals or radiation, and I thought I kind of made a mental timeline in my mind. And so, because when I spoke to the doctors when this first was diagnosed, they said they have no cause for this. It's still a mystery, and that's another reason for helping bring awareness to the disease, amyloidosis, which in my case is the AL version, and that they need more donations and things like that, because it's not like everybody knows about it like breast cancer and they can automatically donate. And so it's just up to people like us to spread the word. But going back about probably, I don't know, at least 15 years ago, I'm thinking my first encounter with, besides regular living on somewhere where it was really nice, in the summers we would go to the beach, and as teenagers I remember rubbing baby oil all over my body to suntan. Things like that are really bad. Now, I don't know, I could sit on that and loop around with that thought that I caused my own disease, but that's just one thing. I mean, who's to say millions of people do that? And if some people lay on tinfoil, you know, I have no idea what, but I'm just saying that's one of the things. So it started with just trying to think about times when I encountered heavy radiation or chemicals. So there was a time also where I had a place with a really nice greenhouse, and back then, that was 20 years ago, we sprayed Killex and Roundup on everything in there, and I would go in there with bare feet all the time and weed and work on my garden. And oh man, I should know, you should know too, because when you go to Canadian Tire or wherever you buy your Killex or your Roundup, they ask you at the till all these questions about it because it's such a poison, but it never registered to me at that age, maybe 25 years ago. Because then after that I started an organic cleaning company, which is funny because I thought there was just so many chemicals around, and that's when I stopped using all sorts of chemicals, and I went to paraben-free shampoos and cleaning products, and I ended up making my own cleaning products. I had my own cleaning line that was totally organic and natural, and that was a real hit. Some of my clients even bought the products off me. Okay, so then I remember another instance where I lived in a house that had a wasp problem. There was like mud wasps in the attic, and I owned this house, and the neighbor had these wasps too, and it was so loud where you would go up in the attic and you would hear buzzing like zzz, and my son, that was his room, and he was starting to be like, Mom, I can't, the buzzing is so loud, it's really scary. And I thought, really? That's so creepy. So, and I opened the attic wall door in there, it was just full of mud wasps. So we quickly phoned the exterminator person who drove up from like an hour, because we lived pretty far out of town, and then the lady had it that was next to us too, and we both decided, okay, we'll go in on this together, and got the place bombed with whatever they call bug bombed to kill everything. And then they say you have to wait 24 hours before you go back in there. And so we waited, and that was just another thing. Like, there's no way that that can't still be in the air after 24 hours when you bomb the whole house to kill millions of wasps. But just another thought. And then at that time, we were made note of the Dirty Dozen, where all the fruit and veggies that were in the top 10 that were the worst fruit and veggies. And as a teenager and a young single mom at that time, I didn't think to wash my veggies. I gave them a quick rinse or whatever, and fruit, but I'm sure that I never got all the pesticides off. Plus, I grew up in a place where it was all the cornfields, and it was always sprayed, where the planes come down and spray chemicals on the crops to keep the bugs from coming. And that's where I grew up my whole childhood, in it, like right close to where that happened. And it's really sad actually to think, because my grandma's house was right where the crops used to be and all the surrounding area. And my grandpa got multiple myeloma, which is like a one split cell away from amyloidosis. So a lot of amyloidosis patients end up getting multiple myeloma. I really don't want to get that. I'm really praying that that doesn't ever happen and it advances into that. But right now I don't. But my grandpa had it, and back when he passed away, which was 20 years ago now, on my dad's birthday actually, that's how I remember it so clearly. Plus I was holding his hand when he passed away. It was really sad. They didn't test for amyloidosis. He could have had it and we would never know, because a lot of times the doctors have been telling me now that the research is that it goes with multiple myeloma. And here the funny thing is right now, which is not funny but weirdly coincidental, that my partner's stepfather has multiple myeloma and amyloidosis, and it was caught really early. He was caught by just having sometimes amyloidosis, when you stick out your tongue, have little bumps all over it, and one of the somehow that got figured out when I guess he just had that as a symptom, and I'm not sure of much else, but they caught it so early that it hadn't done anything yet for damage, which is a miracle, because mine was caught so late that it's done such extensive damage to my heart that I'm on the going to be on the heart transplant list soon. So I should find that out next week, which now I feel like I want them to almost wait till summer's over so I can enjoy this summer, because last summer I was hospitalized the entire time. But anyway, going back to the story of trying to figure things out. So, I mean, I'm just thinking of all these things that it could be. So the other thing is, then I also had a job at an airport where I was the screening officer, which ran the x-ray machine, the walk-through when you go on a flight and you get wanded and x-rayed and your bag swabbed. And I live in a city that's so tiny that we had to sign a document because the x-ray machine was so close to because the room was so tiny, the x-ray machine was right close to where we were standing against the wall, and there was no room for them to move it. So we had to sign a waiver that we were too close to the radiation levels, and nobody thought about anything. We just thought, well, everybody else has worked here, nothing's happened, and so not much thought went into that. Kind of like, ooh, that's scary in the moment, but then, and they even gave us a pamphlet about it because it was so bad. So I did that for a couple years, and you would go get trained in a bigger city and you'd see everybody and you'd think, okay, well, it's probably, the odds are pretty low of getting radiation, that much radiation. But when I come to think about it, that's a lot of radiation, really close, with bags and bags and bags going right by your face, and the machine, the x-ray machine attached to that within a foot of you. So that's another thing I think of when I'm trying to figure this out and putting two and two together. I mean, there's no proof for anything, but it's interesting when you make yourself a timeline and you look back on it and you think, And I just know nowadays, I was talking about the dirty dozen. So and nowadays, that with all those fruit and vegetables that you're supposed to wash really good, almost all of those are, of course, my favorite things. But the pesticide level on stuff is just extreme. So all of these things went on. I was in the sun for years. I went to tanning salons for years and years and years and years. Who knows? I have no idea. But then I worked at a place, this is closest to now, that the environment was so stressful. The employees were amazing. We were all such good friends and very close. But the director was a horrible woman, and she was just such a bully and had a really sly way to manipulate you, and it was terrible. We went through so much micromanaging there. It wasn't only me who suffered from her behavior, many of the other women, but she had it out for me because she thought that I wanted her job. So she especially had it out for me. And I think that added stress, so wherever you work or live, if something's going on in your home or with your kids, or like serious issues of your family or your work that directly affect you, I think that stress from being there over the first year, working with her one-on-one, face-to-face every day, or on the phone with her, just exasperated my disease. Because now we know that this doesn't just happen, this damage just doesn't happen overnight, it happens over time, but it takes time to show your symptoms. And stress, I think, whatever happened before, who knows, but the stress of that environment just blew everything up, because that's when all the symptoms just started popping out like all at the same time. Whereas I could note a couple years before that, I was short of breath and I couldn't breathe as good and I couldn't exercise as good, and I would blame myself all the time for being out of shape, and maybe I should work out more and I should exercise more. And I was always so active, and I always had a good metabolism and wanted to walk and be outside already. But I just remember that was a few years, but then all of a sudden everything crashed when I worked there for about a year. I just got awful. That's when my arms started getting numb, and I couldn't breathe at all, and I was sitting up with 3 pillows to breathe, and I could barely walk to the washroom without breathing and panting, and I could not even dig into the laundry machine and pull out wet laundry and transfer it to the dryer because it was so heavy that I would like lay on top of the washing machine with my head down after for like 15 minutes in order to get enough breath to make it back up the stairs, which now seems just crazy. So many things, amongst the hoarse voice and the massive swelling and the the pain in my stomach and my digestive system was just excruciating to the point where I went to the emergency 3 times or more. I can't even remember. It was such a blur. So many times. Got left there, told to leave there, here actually, many times with, oh, just take Pepto-Bismol and whatever. Meanwhile, I literally couldn't even eat. I could hardly chew. My jaw was so sore. Sometimes I still get that jaw pain. But yeah, if any of you guys, anyone has this that's watching and has any ideas of similar scenarios of how they got that or worked in an environment that was toxic or polluted, or live in a place that's really polluted, I'm curious to see if there is an area where there's so much pollution where this is more abundant. So I keep researching and I keep trying to figure things out, but I don't know if there'll ever be proof, just like there isn't with all these types of cancer, and they make no sense of how people get them and how long they get them for, had them for, and how fast they come up and what spiked it to come out of nowhere, and just all these awful types that can be just rampant. So it's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting to think about all these things and try and put your puzzle together, but you could do that and beat yourself up for it every day and go nowhere. And it wouldn't help your healing journey whatsoever, thinking and dwelling on these things. Thinking about it's one thing, but dwelling on it. And I did that at first, and I got out of that mode really quick because I found myself into the looping cycle. And because I'm a counselor, I know what that is. And when I caught myself doing that cycle of blame and guilt and shame, I had to get out of that because I don't know no one knows what actually causes this disease. So, but like, I really would wonder if you guys, if anybody has it popped out on you and you got the diagnosis under a really, really stressful situation, or if you're just going day by day and it just came out of nowhere, I'd be curious to know. And where you live, how much, like if there's a lot of pollution. There is a lot of pollution where I moved about 10 years ago, 12 years ago. I've been in more pollution than I have been before that, I believe, but I don't know. I can't trace it, just because there's more pulp mills in the area where I am now. But before that, I lived in a valley where we were very close to a big city center, and I know that the pollution kind of wafts in and would sit in the Fraser Valley, so it's quite polluted there as well, but you don't notice it. But this is a different kind of, the pulp mill is known to have these certain elements of this toxic element of this type of gas emitted, and I had it written down at one time. I know what it is. That is very serious, and that's why they pay so much carbon tax and different things, because they produce so much chemicals. Now, those people that work in that environment, I don't know anybody who has this, although there are a lot of strokes and heart attacks and different things that those workers, a lot of them have had a lot. And I know because my partner works there in that place, so that's scary as well, being in that toxic environment, because he looks at me and thinks, oh my God, that place is gonna knock a lot of years off my life. I'm working right in it. So it is scary, because everywhere around you it's hard to find a safe place where you feel safe. I never lived under any massive amounts of power lines or anything, but I know that my ex-husband's mother died of breast cancer, and they lived under heavy power lines, and my ex-husband at the time told me that he thought it was maybe something to do with that for a lot of years. But so there's so many environmental causes and things like that. And I know the more times that you fly, if you have heart damage, you may, and you have this and you don't know it, if you are flying for business or flying on lots of trips or whatever, that it's super bad for your heart to be going up and down. And I wasn't flying a lot, but once a year until COVID hit, and that was doing a lot of damage probably for me, because I remember being in so much out of breath when I got there that I could barely get my luggage and I could barely pull it down the halls. And I thought, always used to think, oh, what is wrong with me? And that's so that's that blame cycle, right? And now it's funny when the picture all comes together, how you think about yourself and you actually feel like, wow, I should have went in a long time ago. But I do believe everything happens at the right time, at the right moment, in the right, it was meant to be there at the exact right time. And I was meant to get diagnosed at that exact right time because they had this amazing drugs that they didn't have years ago. If I had been diagnosed years ago, maybe I would have been put on all these other drugs and had been not being able to get the disease under control, because I was lucky enough to partake in the benefit from this clinical study that went on for 2 years, where half of the group, 100 of the, I think there was 200 patients, 100 of the patients took this one form of medication program and the other took this other medication program. And these half of the first half that were on the one that I'm not on, the deaths went much faster on the downward cycle, and this one put people into a type of almost remission. They say there's no remission for this disease, but a type of remission that's because it never goes away, but way longer and had a longer lifespan. And I got to be on that drug program, and it had only recently come out, which is called the Cyborg D treatment with bortezomib, cyclophosphamide, dexamethasone, and daratumumab, 2 injections, and the rest is all pills. And I did that for 6 months. So those kinds of things, you think about, I feel really lucky to be on that, because within 6 months my numbers went to, well, 9 months actually, to get my numbers to, within 6 months there were significant changes, but by 9 months I had my levels of my cells, which is right now 9 months, at a normal person's cells. So I'm so lucky right now. I'm not dealing with any of a little bit of the jaw pain and stomach pain sometimes, but numbness in my hands and things that it gave me, and I believe that's from my heart or the drugs, I'm not sure, the neuropathy part. But so lucky. I feel so blessed and so lucky to be where I'm at today, because it could have been so much worse. So that's what I was thinking about today, was talking about the different thoughts about how you can get it and the research that I've been reading. So if anybody has anything they want to point out, I'd be happy to hear. Please comment and leave me a comment so I can respond, or tell me anything about your story. I'd be happy to listen, and I will read every message. So thanks so much for watching. I'll see if I can think of anything else. And anyway, next time, friends. Bye for now.